Good morning, friends, and thank you for joining the first webinar of 2026 with TENS, the Episcopal Network for Stewardship. My name is Davey, and I am the Executive Director. I see some familiar faces, and it's always good to see old friends and to make new ones. So thank you for being here today. Today, we're going to be covering what to do after your campaign is finished. How do you evaluate what's happened? I bet we all know to look at the numbers, and we'll be looking at those. But there are lots of other things to consider in how a campaign went so that we can be ready to do it again next year. So I'll be going over a few best practices and how we can evaluate our campaigns, report on the data to our annual meeting, and get ready for next year. And talking about getting ready for next year, I'm going to have a couple of things to talk about recession proofing. Those of you who were on our webinar at the end of last year about pledge campaign practices might remember that we talked a little bit about budgets and recession proofing. I'm going to I'm going to review that work with y'all today because it's the time when we set our annual budgets. So we'll be going over a couple of things about how to make sure we have elastic budgets in our congregation and budgets that work with us and whatever the world throws at us. So we'll be talking about a couple of those things. We'll also be talking about some formation today. And I should get off this screen and talk about our learning objectives because that's really what I'm reviewing. Um, we're going to be talking a little bit about formation and how we keep the conversation about stewardship fresh throughout the year. I'll be giving you a couple of ideas on things you can implement real easily in your congregation so that next fall, when you begin your campaign, it's not a surprise that we're doing stewardship. You'll have had some opportunities to talk about it throughout the year. Um, Somebody has just put into the chat a welcome and good morning, Carolyn. Thanks for being here from Leesburg, Virginia. Please use our chat to ask questions today. It's a great way for me to be able to see what questions you might have. So if when I pause for error every once in a while, I'll take a look and see what's been put into the chat and answer some questions there. I also want to make sure that you get your questions asked live if you want that too. And the best way to do that is going to be raising your hand using that raise hand button in your reaction tab. That'll put a green box around your face, and I'll see that you're trying to get my attention. I can only see four of you right now, and I know that there are many more because I'm sharing from presentation mode. So I won't see you if you're trying to wave at me. So please raise your hand using the technology and then ask your question and we'll answer it. So two ways to get your questions, chat and raise your hand. That said, let's move into our work today. All campaigns, all fundraising, indeed, all work in the church begins and ends with gratitude. We are grateful that we are able to do ministry, that we're able to gather, that we're able to have places and spaces and to do that, and the time and ability. And so when we finish our campaign, whatever it is that says we're done right now with our campaign for this year, the very next activity should be thanking everyone who made a gift. And we want to thank them for participating because sending in a pledge form or an indication of giving, whether it's through pledges or a one-time gift or however people want to do it, when they participate, that's really great. And whatever the amount is, we want to make sure that they feel equally thanked and a part of our congregation. We want to thank people for volunteering because it's not just our treasure that we ask for, but it's time and talent as well. So when people say, I'd like to be on the Readers Guild or the Usher list this year or the Altar Guild, or I'd like to work on the flowers, make sure you write that. Say thank you for that. We'll put you in touch with the person who coordinates that ministry and make sure you get on the list because we'd love to receive your gifts of time and talent as well. Thank people for the things that they do in church. I find when I'm writing a note to someone, if I include one line about something that I know personally about them, you make the best coffee cakes, thank you, or I love hearing the way you sing the tenor line, or whatever it is that we observe and remember about people, that little piece of connection for which we are grateful really means to them, people are paying attention to me. My gifts are honored. People love what I do, and I love to do it too. So make sure that you're thanking people for all the many ways that they give to your congregation. It's not just our gifts. And I know that our financial gifts. I know at the end of the year, when we're collecting money and we're creating next year's budget, that money, that dollar figure can be what we're thinking about. But let's take a deep breath and remember that as stewards, we're thanking and encouraging people to make all kinds of gifts all the time. That's what our churches run on. Um, Gratitude for the whole campaign. That includes the people who worked on it, the people who participated in it, the indulgence of the congregation for taking time and an expression of that during the fall or whenever it is that you run your campaign. Remember to thank everyone for rolling with it and giving feedback. I think that's really important. Your your members will generally be thanked in two ways. Most churches do this. The treasurer probably sends a letter saying, Davy, you made a gift of $1,000 and you're paying it monthly. Thank you very much. You'll hear from me next at the end of the quarter or halfway through the year or whatever. That official reminder, here's your thank you, here's your tax ID information, whatever it is that people need from the treasurer. But above and beyond that, a personal note, and you can spread this out between your whole committee, your vestry, your clergy. The personal handwritten thank you note for participating in the campaign doesn't have any financial information attached to it, so you're not sharing confidential information. But you can split up that list of everyone who participated and write those little personal thank yous. Like I said, you make the best bread. We thank you for that communion loaf. It's great. Or, thank you for sweeping the steps, or the way you welcome people, or for raising a great family, whatever it is that you want to remember and thank people for, put that in a little handwritten note. They don't need to be long. They can be real quick note cards. It's a personal touch at the end of your campaign. Thanking people can't happen enough. And we generally like to say that you should thank someone at least 3 times for a gift that they've made. More is better. That official note from the treasurer, that handwritten note from someone in the church, and then make certain that there's an announcement about, thank you all for participating, or maybe it happens at the annual meeting, but people feel really thanked and honored. That's really important. Okay, let's talk about those numbers though. So we're going to talk about numbers, we're going to talk about membership, and we're going to talk about feelings and what we should look for at the end of a campaign. It's really important that as we look at the conclusion of a campaign, we're looking at numbers in the right way. Yes, there's a financial picture attached to that. And so we want to know what that final number is. But let's put it in some context. Let's look at last year and maybe 3 years of information. Are we on a trend? Are we going up? Are we going down? Are we staying the same? And put that little piece of analysis into it as well, because this really helps us talk about uh, the financial health of the congregation, people's interest and ability to fund the mission, and also it's a little snapshot of generosity and capacity at the moment that we run our campaigns. So pay attention to how you're trending. Also pay attention to commitment and participation. We say that we aim for 100% participation, even if your pledge card says, I can't make a gift right now, but this is what I'd like to do for my time or my talent. Acknowledge that we're looking for everyone to make a commitment to the church this year. And so, please take a look at how many commitment cards have come in and what you might expect from that. And then, is there an increase in giving? Are people generally giving more? Are some people giving less? And that's to look at for trends. There will be other questions later on when we look at individuals, and that might be for the clergy or the treasurer, the stewardship committee to look at. But in general, let's look at some trends. And we also want to know who's decreasing their giving. This doesn't mean that they're less uh, interested in your congregation or less involved in the mission. It could mean that there's been a change in their financial circumstances. It could mean any number of things. So just note when we have a decrease, what is that about? And it's also good to know who's staying the same. Again, this could say a lot of things. It could say my financial situation is the same this year as it was last year. We're doing great work. I want to sponsor it. But it could also be a sign that maybe it's time for us to change our messaging up a little bit. Maybe we're getting that sort of pledge plateau or that donor fatigue that we get where people are just, sort of filling out a pledge form and saying, same as last year. That's not bad. People give gifts the way they do. But we want to know if things are just staying the same, but we know that costs are going up and cost of living is going up. People have a different financial picture perhaps each year. And so if we're not trending up or looking in some way at that, what's causing that? Ask some questions about that in your committee and learn those trends. A few more ideas about numbers. As I said, the trend is really important. This year's number, we're always chasing that, but it has to sit in the context of what we're doing and what we're coming to expect from our congregation. Do we have ambitious goals? Are we asking people to raise more money than they did last year and they're not hearing that message? What is it about our messages that we want to say, and what is it about the financial health of our community that we want to understand? I always like to look at 3 years of data when possible, because that gives us a real good analysis of how households are trending over time. You can anonymize that data when you want to share it with a committee or something like that and strip out the names, but look at individual gifts or look at ranges of giving or things like that to make it confidential. And I'll go over a couple of those tools in a little bit. Uh, Great. Thank you for that. So just a moment here. I need to deal with one thing. Okay. Um, Thank you for that indulgence. So let's talk a little bit about.
Oh, you remove my friend.
Oh, goodness. Okay, sorry, friends. Um, Dealing with a couple of issues there. Let's talk a little bit about giving data. Uh, When we talk about the way our congregations present their data, and we look at everyone's giving over time, we have a way of looking at this that we usually say, here's the average gift that people give. Now, if you remember math class, like I probably don't, there's a difference between the average and the median. And often when we look at giving, the average gift is helpful, but it takes into account those real outliers that can pull up an average or drag down an average. The median is that gift right in the middle that sits right in the middle of that range and figures out how do we look at what's an honest snapshot. I look at both of those numbers, average and median, when I look at this. A friend of mine from Church of the Advent and Sun said he wished West Arizona shared his data from 2021 with me, and we did a full analysis on it, which you're going to see now. So you can see how you can look at numbers and data and make some understanding of trends and pledges. In this community, what they looked at and what they learned was that they broke down giving by percentages. The top 20% of givers, the next 30%, that middle, that magnetic middle, and then the base. And they looked at each of those segments individually. What are our most generous donors doing? Are they what kind of giving are they making? And then this percentage at the end in parentheses is what percentage of the budget that 20% contributes. So you can see how gifts and giving shake out. And that doesn't mean that the base of the pyramid is any less important than the top of the pyramid, but it means when you're looking at numbers and when you're looking at giving, where are your biggest gifts coming from and how much of an impact is that on your budget? What do we need to learn about those trends? So one of the things that we like to do is to put that in an actual pyramid. This is a great tool to use in a uh, report in an annual meeting where you can take a look and share out your results with the whole group and help people understand what does our giving look like. This isn't to say, again, that you want to emphasize the top 20 and say everyone should be in the top, because that's impossible. Not everyone can give at the same level. But it's important to know where you sit and what impacts those gifts have. People mentally will place themselves on the pyramid once they see it. And then you can take this again and move it into real numbers. HH means households, by the way. That was our abbreviation for that. So you can see what happens in weekly giving, in monthly giving, in overall pledge, and then these numbers at the bottom. So the top 20% gives $103 a week average for the church. That's a big number that contributes to their budget in an important way. And the base gives an important amount as well. So it's really good for us to know how our numbers relate to each other. There is a form, and I will send it to you as the part of this presentation. We have templates ready to go, so you don't have to recreate this. We have the pyramid and the next step that I'm going to give you, which is that step sheet I'm about to show you. So you don't have to recreate those. We have the templates built for you. Speaking of steps, this is another great way to present data to your at your annual meeting or as you wrap up your campaign and look at next year's campaign. This is anonymized data. So this particular congregation, it has a total of 68 gifts that come in. Together, they contribute this number, 272,000. The average gift size is about $4,000. And then you can see at each level how many households give at that level. This is a useful tool because you can see, as usual, there's a big middle. Those middle gifts, that middle range is where most of our giving happens in most congregations. But then there are those top few gifts that really make the budget possible, that make they're the largest gifts, and that those are important for us to know as well. Again, this is a great tool because people will put themselves on it. Oh, where's my gift? Where's my step? And when they want to imagine what it would look like to move up to the next step, they can see how much impact that has on a congregation's budget. So if I move up or down, what does that mean for my gift? And this is helpful because when we only think about our own gift, and not as it relates to everybody else's giving, we forget how we're all a part of the budget, how we all fund this ministry together, how we all participate in this ministry together. When we're only looking at our own contribution, we forget that it takes a whole church of people, each of them giving at their best level, to make our church's mission possible. So this helps us remember that we're not in isolation. And in fact, our gift isn't unique. There are other people at our range making gifts to the church, and we might be able to increase and see what that could look like. Again, this isn't a template that we give you. I'll show you the link on where you can download that from our website. And I encourage you to use this tool when you are presenting at your annual meeting or when you want to wrap up your campaign. Really look at this and say, this is who we are in our congregation. This is where our giving is. Another good tool to use is a table of proportional giving. One of the things that we talk about is imagining dedicating a percentage of your income to the church, whatever that is, to prayerfully discern that number with your members, with your household. Maybe as a family, you want to say, what do we want to give to the church this year? You say, we're going to give 1% or 2% or 10% of our household income or our income to the church this year, whatever those numbers are. And what this means is that when your income goes up or down, you have a calculation ready to go. We're giving 3%. And so if you get a raise, you're giving a little bit more. If you don't, you're giving what you did. And that picking that percentage, dedicating that percentage is one way that we encourage people to give faithfully. And it doesn't work for everyone, but it works for some. So this proportional giving table, if you use our pledge cards, it's on the reverse side of a pledge card every year so that people can see what their income level is. We actually expanded it a little this year and gave some higher levels because that's we'd been asked to do that. So you can see what's my gift? What would it look like by the week if I gave 6% of my income or 8% of my income? What is that gift total? These are great tools to help people make discernment decisions about their giving. And at the end of the day, that's what we want is for people to feel that they have a prayerful way to consider their giving. So that's a lot about money. Oh, I see some questions. Yeah, so Mirage, I'm not sure what you're trying to communicate, but there are so many great ways that we give gifts to our church through singing. I love that act of coming together um, and um, and making music together and celebrating. Each of these are prayers to God, and they're beautiful. So thank you for your notes in our chat. Let's talk a little bit about the other things that we might want to consider when it comes to our campaigns, because it's not just about money, it's about how people received the campaign and how people understood it and what did we communicate and what was that like. So we ask some questions so that we learn, did we share enough information so that people knew what they were raising money for? If you ask a lot of people, why did you make a gift? What does your church do with the money? They probably don't remember the line item budget. They might remember half of the ministries, or maybe they can name them all. But what are you actually funding? What are you doing? We want everybody to be able to have an answer to that. Like, I give because I really love this, or this ministry really matters to me, and all the others are great too. But, whatever it is, it's really important for us to kind of take a look at Did we share enough information about why we're asking for money and what people can do to help with that? We want people to have the right tone for our for the program. So we don't want it to feel manipulative. We don't want it to feel forced. We don't want it to feel like it's a break from our personality or our charism, right? Sometimes I see congregations get together for their fundraising, and those moments in their that presentation that they're doing is so very different from their normal ministry, right? It's like stewardship season exists in this other plane of theology. We don't want that. All the good things that you do together, all the ways that you love each other, all the kind words that you share, we want that to be what is really important. Um, uh, that what is really important for them to be able to participate in the program and have the right tone. So let me take care of letting some folks in. I understand that there are some participants waiting to get in. Let me let in one person. Thank you for that. Just needed to take some time here. Um, I think you're right, Carolyn, and I'm about to fix that. Thank you. We've never had this before. So anyway, that's interesting. Thanks for that, friends. We're now back. So finally, we want to make sure that people are having fun with the campaign, that people are having a sense of joy, and that this campaign is not drudgery, right? Sometimes I've seen leaders in church say, here's the campaign again. It's time, and I'm like, that just sets us up for this uh, this boring response, this sad response, or it's campaign season again, back to regular programming in 5 weeks, right? We don't want to communicate that. We want people to feel like this is a time of storytelling, of coming together, of sharing a lot of story. Uh, we want people to find that there is a sense of joy and fun and beauty in this. So please make certain that you're asking some questions after your campaign, getting some feedback. How was that for you? Did you like our theme this year? Did the materials make sense? Did you understand what you were doing? Factor that into thinking about next year's program. Also, let's make sure that our program isn't too long or too short. We want it to be long enough that everyone can participate, and if they miss a Sunday or two, because they're traveling or whatever, they haven't missed the campaign. But we don't want the campaign to go on so long that we have that people are like, when is this thing going to end? Do we talk about anything besides the campaign here, right? So I like to think 5 to 8 weeks, at 8 weeks sort of being the maximum. That's a good length of time. 1 month, maybe the month of October, or the October bleeding into November a little bit. Often really a helpful guideline there for a long enough campaign, so that it doesn't start to feel like, oh, it's still a campaign. We're still talking about this. Those middle Sundays, by the way, often get a little tedious, right? Because a lot of people make their gifts at the front, and a lot of people will make their gifts at the end. And so if we have all these middle weeks where the gift number isn't changing much, no new pledge cards have come in, then it starts to feel like, get it in. We don't want that. We want people to feel like this is an effortless, joy-filled, serious time, and that's how we engage. Did people feel like they knew what the church was needing for its budget? This is different from wanting to fund a budget or funding our ministries, but like, what does it take to run our church? Why does it matter? What goes into it? This is where a narrative budget can really help us understand how our programs get funded, how we think about things. So ask some questions about that. Make sure we're focusing more on the Bible than on the bills. Let's make sure that we're understanding our theology of generous and joyful giving and not feeling that we have to fund the budget, we have to get utilities paid, oh, those salaries are out of control, because that's what people will then focus on. What we do want them to focus on is generosity and gratitude. We participate in the mission of the church because it's been given to us by Jesus to create this church here on earth, to grow God's kingdom, to participate with God in that ongoing creation. And our gratitude for God's generosity leads us into abundance. And that abundant thinking is where we should focus our campaign. So make sure that that message came through in your campaign. Feelings tell us a lot about about the campaign. If people feel exhausted, that means both committee and members at the end of the campaign, then we've done something wrong. It should feel inspiring. If it starts to feel like drudgery, if it starts to feel like guilt, if it starts to feel like it's work rather than joy, then we're missing out on why we do this and what our church needs from us. So make sure that people have received the message the right way. If the campaign didn't feel like fun, then it's time to look at the messaging. Maybe it's time for a new model, maybe it's time for some new materials. TENS provides uh, a theme every year and a program every year. But I'll be honest, it's very similar from one year to the other because it's the standard form. We are beginning to advocate for creating more materials and different kinds of campaigns that can be run. And I encourage you also to look at different models as well. If you've been doing the same campaign for a few years, switch it up a little. If you've been sending out letters and pledge cards and waiting for them to come in, maybe start to do some small group work or some dinners or hosted events. If you haven't done an every member canvas in a decade, maybe it's time to pull that model back out and dust it off and try it out in your congregation and see what it might look like. That kind of work can help us make stewardship not feel like this annual begathon or the sermon on the amount, but that we are actually talking about something that's life-giving to our church and to us. If at the end of the day, our numbers didn't match what our goal was, or we are left with a gap, the very first questions we should be asking aren't, why are people not being generous? It should be, what could we have done different? What could our messaging be? Did we have anything that we would improve? Because that'll start to give you a window into how to make next year's campaign or any cleanup that needs to happen with this year's campaign a little bit more honest if you are asking the questions, what did people really need for us and did we give them that? Um, what did we learn? We also want to ask that. So pull your committee together, pull the vestry together if they were involved. What did we learn that we want to do next year? What did we learn that we don't want to do next year? How do we make that as a part of next year's plan? This is important because there will be another campaign next year, right? So let's take good notes from what happened, from what we learned, and make certain that next year we pass that along to the committee and that we do, we've paid attention to what people have told us. Um, Set some goals, and we're going to talk a little bit more in the next section about goal setting. But start to make some ideas. We really want to push for 100% participation next year. That's going to be really important. Or we really want to emphasize time and talent and not just treasure. So we're going to make some changes this year in January about how we want to talk about next year's giving. This will really help us put that work together. So as you sweep up the dust from your celebration and you write those thank you notes. Celebrate your committee, make sure that they get thanked. A little luncheon, maybe a gift card, maybe just a handwritten note that says, thank you so much for doing what you do. This is really important because your committee worked hard. Have a follow-up plan. There will be some gifts that didn't come in, some pledges that you expected that still haven't come in because people were traveling or people were busy and they just didn't get it in right. Don't give up on them. They still can contribute and make it into the campaign, even after the campaign has closed. So make sure that you have a plan for following up and that plan is an honest and joyful one. Uh, I say that as a little reminder to myself. Often, when I'm in charge of cleaning up, my first inclination is to say, hey, we were looking for your pledge form and it didn't come in. That's the wrong approach. The right approach could be uh, we ran a great campaign this year and we got these results. Look at what we did. I'm so glad that you're a member here. Here are all the ways that people are participating through time and talent, through volunteering, by making a gift. How would you like to be included in this year's campaign? It's a more gentle reminder than making people feel like we're nagging them for paperwork. Nobody wants to have that experience. So, be gentle in the way we follow up with gifts that still need to be closed. Finally, when we're talking about questions and things to remember, there are going to be some pastoral things that came up because whenever we talk about money in church, we're talking about more than dollars and finances. We're talking about people's lives and how they engage that. So please make certain that we are flagging any conversations that came up when you were asking people for their giving and they were like, I'm really going through a rough time right now. That might be a note to send to your rector and say, you might want to follow up with Davey. He shared something with me in our conversation, and I'll let you guys have that conversation. Maybe somebody says, I'm really angry about this or that in the church. That happens. We know that people sometimes vote with their dollars, and sometimes they'll tell the person who asks them for a gift why they're angry, but they haven't communicated that to anyone else. It's another one of those moments to refer it to your pastor and say, there's something going on here. And I don't want to get in the middle. Here's what, you might want to reach out to them. Um, these are ways to follow up with the things you learn and pass them to the appropriate place for that boundary and that relationship to be, so that people who bring up concerns, and it's not just bad things, they can also share good things. Hey, we got a new job and we're buying a new house and things are tight, but we have more money and whatever they might want to say eventually. Those are also celebrations to share with your clergy or your pastor so that people know uh, they they have a good sense of what's happening in their congregation and who might need some extra attention or support or celebration. Let's remember fundraising is on a cycle. It always comes back around. That our campaign cycle is always in one of its phases, and it spends the longest phase in the sort of planning, cultivation, we might call it. Formation is a better word for church, where we're talking about why we raise money, what it's going for, how we are generous, how we're called to be generous. Before we get to the stewardship piece, the identification piece, the solicitation phase, we're in a long awareness raising phase in church. So let's remember that we're always on a journey with our fundraising. It didn't end when we finished the campaign or the annual meeting, and it doesn't start in October when we begin the next campaign. We're always in some place in the cycle, and we can always be doing a little work for it. I find it really great when congregations have stewardship committees that continue to meet throughout the year. Maybe they don't have the same level of urgency in the spring or summer that they had in the fall, but that they continue to say, what can we be doing to get the message out? How can we be thanking people for their participation? How can we learn more about what people are looking for or needing or wanting to hear from us? It doesn't mean we have to talk about money every week. We can talk about generosity, abundance, vocation, mission, all of those words about how we interact with the gospel and share it with the world around us. Those are conversations about stewardship as well. The stewardship of our time, the stewardship of our relationships, our connection with the community. I love it when a stewardship committee participates in setting the goals for the next campaign. I don't like it when the finance committee meets and says, here's your goal, stewardship committee, go out and do it. Because that doesn't feel collaborative to me. What is nicer is if this is a conversation between the folks who are running the campaign and the finance committee that is trying to put the whole budget together and the vestry that's then charged with managing that whole thing. Participate in the goal setting. Invite your stewardship committee to that table. Solicit their opinions. They've learned a lot about who's making gifts and how, and those relationships and those stories. Give them a chance to talk about that and share what's shareable and set your goals. You can set more realistic goals that way. Goals that are about, well, we heard a lot of people talking about things that they have planned for next year. It's going to be a really good year for some households. I think we can plan big, or we're hearing this message of change in the economics of our community. We want to pass that along. Whatever it is, participate in the goal setting. And vestry and finance committee members, help your stewardship committee understand the big picture as well. So maybe it's not just about time, talent, and treasure, but maybe you're looking to grow your congregation. How can the stewardship committee, with its work and what it learned and the relationships it has, help you grow your church this year, or come up with some ideas on how to involve more people in ministry, how to recruit more volunteers. They've just heard from folks who say, yeah, I'm willing to do that ministry, or if somebody would ask me, I would say yes. So give them a chance to work on those goals with you too. This is collaborative leadership, and it takes a little bit more effort and time to involve more voices in that. But at the end of the day, what you then have is alignment in your church leadership with everyone pulling in the same direction. So invite your folks in to make those plans. Your goals should be grounded, achievable, aspirational, but still reachable. Maybe you have some goals that people are going to increase. This is a great goal. 50% of people will increase their giving. That can be just by $1. Uh, you've checked that off your list. So make some goals that are achievable and make people excited about what the next campaign is going to be. I just received feedback from a congregation, and they said they had 18 new gifts. Seven of them came from people who had made gifts before but never pledged. And so this was a big shift for those people who had sort of been on the margins and were making gifts but weren't interested in affiliating themselves with paperwork. Well, they did this. And so that's a number to be celebrated. That's a great number to talk about in a congregation as they move forward, and report that at your annual meeting. Look, we had new gifts. People who hadn't made pledges last year uh, made a pledge this year. That is a great number to celebrate. And that's a goal that you can make also for your congregation. People who have never pledged before will make a gift. Wow, what a good goal. If it's two people, five people, 10 people, or households, make those goals. When it comes to your annual meeting, please make sure that your stewardship committee has a place, has a report, has a moment to share out some anecdotes to share the feedback they've heard, but also to gather more and give a report like the ones that I've shared about pyramids or steps or ranges, performance of the campaign. Let your stewardship chair or someone that can talk about that participate in your annual meeting and let that be a celebration of your campaign. Tell at least one inspirational story um, from someone or invite them to tell their own story about why they made a gift or why it matters to them. That kind of storytelling that we did during the campaign, have one of those at your annual meeting and ask Davey to tell his story about why he supports your church in ministry. That little moment of inspiration and high energy at your annual meeting can be really good. So give stewardship a report and let them speak and put some handouts with a pyramid or some steps or some way to share the data from what your campaign did. Before we end, I want to review a couple of things as we are moving into setting next year's budgets about making some elasticity or some plans for whatever this weird economy might throw at us in 2026. It's really good to have realistic spending goals in our budget. Sometimes treasurers will take a line item and they'll just factor it out by 12 months, right? So they'll say, we're going to spend this much over the year and it's just cost out by 12 by month. And that could be the way the money is going to be spent, but it could also be not reflective. Maybe you spend more in the summer on children's ministry because you're doing some camps or something like that. And so you want to adjust that so that the middle of the year has more spent expense and the beginning of the year doesn't. Give people an accurate projection of the cash flow because that matters in the middle of the summer. Also, talk about how gifts come in. If you have one of those summer slumps, predict that. Put that in your budget. Look at last year and the year before and the year before's performance of how money comes in and put that out so that your budget is an actual reflection of how your money comes in and goes out. If you can begin building a reserve a little bit each month from your budget to put in so that you have some operating funds set aside, this is really important. We need that flexibility in a reserve because there will be a rainy day at some point. So begin to build that. We want to really be clear why we're raising money. I said this at the beginning that everyone should be able to articulate your mission. What is it that this church and this community stands for, believes in, does in the community? How do they raise money? What are they doing? So, talk about, be transparent with members about financial needs, how the funds are used, and what we're doing about it. This might be a good year, or next year might be a good year in your campaign to do that one-on-one every member canvas model because it's about connection and relationship, which when times are tough and the world is scary, it's a good time to be able to interact one-on-one with your members and learn what's going on in their lives. Encourage those recurring gifts, online gifts or your bank bill pay, other ways like that make it so easy for people to flip a switch and have electronic giving happen on a cycle that makes sense for their paychecks, for their monthly household budget, whatever. And it allows the church to then count on that money coming in at fixed periods. Asset-based community development or understanding who else in our community is doing the kinds of ministry that we are, or companion or collaborative ministry, gives us the chance to partner with people who are doing similar ministries. Maybe there are some economies of scale or cost cutting we can do if we combine our ministry with the church down the street or with another community organization that's engaged in similar work. Find some ways that you can share resources and volunteers and ideas to better serve your community. At the end of the day, that's what our ministry is there for, is to serve the community best. And so sometimes finding those natural paths of collaboration make it a little easier on our volunteers and budgets, and still give great work in the community and ability for our congregations to engage in that work. Take a look at diversifying your income. You should have a chart that shows how the money comes in: pledges, endowment, and bequests, the flower fund, space rental, and start to try and widen those pieces of the chart that, or those slices of pie that aren't about pledge, that are about other things. If you need to grow the endowment, maybe you need an endowment type campaign at some point. If you need more space rental, are there places and spaces in your church that could be used for nonprofits or other events to come in? uh, you know, a community space, people to run their birthday parties or retirement parties. If they need a place with a kitchen and some folding tables, you have that in your church. So, do you need some more income streams? Income diversification is a great way to add to your congregation's budget when your congregation is giving at a maximum level. Look for those. You might need some cleanup on some spaces, a fresh coat of paint, some people to come in on a Saturday and refresh a space in order to make it ready. But that's money and time well spent if it in fact adds some diversity to your income. Uh, your congregation likely has some continuing education money. Your diocese has training days and other things that they sponsor. Look into those and do some training for your vestry, your stewardship committee, your clergy, on things like adaptive leadership or crisis management or collaborative leadership or community organizing. All of these things, which are often given at low cost or no cost in community organizations or perhaps from diocesan ministry, can help you increase capacity in your volunteers and expand everybody's ability to function in a crazy world or in a stressed environment, or if there's some sort of crisis looming in your community. Prepare for that now. Finally, monitor your budget throughout the year. When you set it in January and your vestry approves it and your congregation approves it at the annual meeting, take a look at it every quarter in your vestry. See, I know you're reviewing it at every meeting, but say, what changes do we need to make? Are we not spending money in the way we thought? Are we not raising as much as we thought we would? Are we raising more than we thought we would? And we can increase some breathing room or increase our reserves. Take a look at your budget and make it adaptive, make it adjustable. And you can do that and then share the results of that with your community and say, this is what we did with your budget, and here's how we're doing it, and here's the transparent way that we're sharing with you what our needs are and how we're meeting them. Finally, let's talk about some formation, and then I'm going to open it up to your questions. Um, Let's talk about your spiritual gifts that exist in the congregation. Everything that we do, that we bring to the church, is a gift that we can offer and can find a need for. If there's someone in your church that can do a class on a topic or wants to convene a group to do something, all of that community building, all of that ministry potential, solicit that, learn it, and operationalize it so that people can really understand my gifts are needed and this community wants to help me. Uh, are there workshops or um, adult education, book studies, things like that you might want to take a look at? The TENS resource library, we have a fully built out bibliography on books you might want to read for a stewardship small group or other kinds of formation work that you can do in individual or group dynamics. Take a look at that, download that. They're all available on Amazon or electronic versions often. So take a look at those kinds of things. What do we need to do to prepare people and help them understand their own gifts? Generosity is something that we live in. It's something that we understand as Christians if we understand God working in us and through us and throughout all time. But it's something that we also need to practice and put into practice. It's one of those skills that is a discipline. It gets better when we exercise it. It gets better when we use it. It gets better when we find more ways to talk about generosity and share that with people. So do a couple of things this year from your stewardship committee that make your job easier next year by talking a little bit about formation. You might read a book together. I always call out Henry Nouwen's A Spirituality of Fundraising. In fact, you see it's right at my desk at the ready. This is one of the best books that you can use because it's short, it's really big print. You can finish it in about 15 or 20 minutes and have a great conversation about it. It shares with us the theology of why we raise money in church and why it's more than the budget and how it relates to the gospel and our community life together. There are other great books out there. Charles Clowen, one of Ten's very good friends, talks about or 1 minute stewardship. They're short lessons, easy to share, really great ideas. Maybe think about a mid-year budget and mission review. Maybe take that halfway point and say, let's look at our budget. How have we been spending our money? How is it coming in? Remind people what we said we were going to do at the beginning of the year, and are we on track to do it? If we said we were going to hire a youth person or train, go for some training or um, I don't know, repaint the bathrooms. Are we doing that? Is it on a list? Is somebody in charge of it? Is it happening? So this is a great way for us to remind ourselves what happened at our annual meeting and talk about it, not just the budget, but also the things that we said we were going to do as a community. Do some storytelling. You told great stories in your campaign. Continue to do that work and feature stories in your monthly newsletter or maybe occasionally in announcements. Somebody stand up and talk about why they give or why they sing in the choir or what they like about the youth ministry or whatever it is, right? What they like about volunteering on Saturdays in your food ministry. Have people tell those stories throughout the year. Write them up and put them in your newsletter or on your website or share it in your social media. Let people know that we're doing real work here and we're engaging in storytelling. And finally, preach and teach on stewardship outside of the stewardship campaign. There is a stewardship lesson. As long as we're talking about the gospel, there's a way to talk about the gifts that we share. Jesus always calling us into ministry to use our gifts to accomplish God's work in the world. There is always a stewardship sermon about sharing and using God's gifts to make the world a better place that you can pull out of every Sunday. So take one of those Sundays in the middle of the year and give a good old stewardship sermon about how we give, how we share, how that accomplishes God's work. And it doesn't end with, and you can pick up your pledge forms at the back of the church, right? It just is a honest way to remind people that stewardship is year round. We're always doing this work. I hope that these ideas about how to share the results of your campaign, how to report out at your annual meeting, how to engage in goal setting, and how to do some formation and preparation work will make your year of generosity a good one and prepare next year for a great campaign ready to go, people understanding why and what we're doing together. To assist with that, we have our theme ready for download and ready for next year's pledge campaign. You can use it all year round. It's called Plenty Good Room, and it's based on a spiritual, and it's just a beautiful image that there is always more room in God's house. We can always add another chair. We can always build a bigger table. We never run out when we are looking at God's economy and God's world. So there's plenty of room. We are always invited. So we have seasonal reflections. They started on Advent 1. Right now, the Epiphany one is in play, and we'll have one for Lent and Easter and Pentecost in the middle of the summer and all throughout the year. You can find those on our website and download them as a part of the plan for next year. We also have, and I really want to point this out, this is new for TENS. In addition to campaign materials, we have two formation curricula that we have put together for Plenty Good Room. One of them is an adult education session uh, run over a few weeks. You can do it in your campaign or any time during the year. And it's great scripture-based learning about the theme and about our how we engage the tools. The second curriculum that we have this year is for families and households. So it's really about activities that parents and kids can do together that talk about stewardship and giving and sharing. They're great ways. You can also adapt them into your youth ministry or your godly play program and have them that way. Whatever you do, we want you to engage in some great formation for stewardship this year. That's what I had to say about sharing your gifts and evaluating your campaign. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to open it up to questions. I appreciate all of your patience in dealing with some chaos in our group earlier today, but I think we got that cleared up and we can be back in our group and ask questions and share openly. So thank you for that, friends. What questions do you have? What can I do? We can talk about what we talked about or anything stewardship related, how to get you ready for this year. Here we are together. What are your questions, friends?
I don't have a question, but can I share some of the results from our committee watching
Please.
the webinar in the beginning? So first of all, I just want to say thank you because we had the most amazing campaign here in Virginia, and the week right before our kickoff brunch, the federal government shut down. And so this goes back to your thing about focusing on gratitude and generosity so that it weathers any storm. But we exceeded our goal. I mean, it was just incredible. So I wanted to share just a couple of the super fun things that we had done that were just kind of creative and fun. You know, you kept emphasizing joy and gratitude and abundance. Oh my God, it was so fantastic. So one of the things that we did to get new members was we had several parishioners offer a match for new pledges. And so we actually had a group of longtime parishioners do that because they were so vested in, building the church and making sure the church stays. We're a historical church and building, so that was fantastic. And we met that match. And then the other thing that we did, and guys, this was just fun, was midway through, you talk about picking up the doldrums when we kind of plateaued. We had a special gratitude coffee hour where we had sweets and fun things. But the key was that if you came to it, for every member of your family who was there, you got a raffle ticket. And while during there, you had to be present to win. But the prize was a reserved parking place and a reserved pew, right, on Christmas Eve for Christmas Eve service.
That-
And we had so many people. And we noticed a significant bump of pledges after that little event. And it was just a blast. It's just been so fantastic. So I'm so grateful. And we learned that one of the weaknesses of our congregation is our record keeping. So in May, we're going to have May is membership month. And we're going to try to get everybody on Realm and just have everybody come into a coffee hour and check their info. And it's just been just a journey of joy. And we started out with a book study. I think it was like Not Your Parents' Offering.
Offering plate. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
yes. Yeah, it's just been so fantastic. So thank you for all these
Oh,
resources. And we're excited. We're meeting all year and we can't wait for next year. So thank you so much.
wow, Carolyn. Great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that enthusiasm. But I want to highlight the two great ideas that you had. If you have people in your congregation that are willing to do matching, it is a great way to get new gifts in to do that sort of work. My congregation right now is doing a matching for sort of endowment raising. Somebody's made a very large gift and they'll match your gift into the endowment. Matching is a really good way if you have a parishioner who has that sort of capacity and that inclination. They're already going to make the gift anyway, but they kind of do it in a matching way so that it inspires people. That is such a creative, really good way to get new energy into a campaign. So I love that. Congratulations. I'm glad that worked for you. I also think that you're like mid campaign, let's revive things a little bit and zhuzh it up. Whatever it is, a primo spot for Christmas Eve
It
sounds like
was
a good.
fun.
I love that.
And one of
And
the winners was a family that has about four little children. And so the mom was just so thrilled that she wasn't going to have to get everybody there an hour before the
right,
service.
they can scoot in at the last minute
Yeah.
and have a pew waiting for them. I love that.
Yeah.
What a
It
good
was just so
idea.
fun.
What a good idea. And again, your stewardship campaign should be fun, joy-filled, have moments of celebration and high points like that, because then it feels like, wow, this is a community event. This is great. So thank
Mm-hmm.
you, Carolyn. That's
Well, thank
inspiring.
you. It was fantastic.
Good stuff. Anyone else have a comment on how their campaign went or a question about results that they might have received or anything they would like to share or talk about? Yeah, Catherine, welcome.
Well, thank you. Well, Carolyn, I'm really glad you started with that, telling about what your activities, because last year we did do a matching campaign for people who increased their pledge. And so that was just from that individual an additional $7,000. And then people did increase their pledge. So it was a great year. And now this year we did not do that. I'm not sure you can do that every year. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but pledges went way back down, not below a previous level, but certainly down. And I kind of knew they would because that's $7,000 is a good percentage of our annual budget. So, what do you do? How do you feel good about that? What do you do next year? That kind of thing.
Catherine, again, matching is a great idea. And I think you're right. You can't do it every year, otherwise it's not special. It's like having Christmas every day or your birthday every month, right? So like it is one of those tools that you bring out every once in a while. and then take a break from and let people look forward to it again, if you will. But so I love that you did it. I'm not surprised that, it sort of went back because that incentive, um, wasn't there. I cut my teeth in fundraising working for the YMCA 30 years ago. And if you know a YMCA, you know that every year they do a campaign. And our YMCA had a similar sort of like if you increased your gift from last year, you got the that was being matched and all kinds of stuff. And it was a great incentive to do that because you knew that your gift was going to get doubled. That increase amount was going to get doubled, right? It was a great program. But again, you can't find a donor to do that every year. And if you did it every year, then people would just expect it and build on it, and you'd start spending the money before you raised it, right? So, like, let's use that judiciously. But when you have it and you can do it, I love that. So great. Don't be disappointed by things returning to normal because it still sounds like it's a very generous community that made their best gift. It's just, they really responded to that incentive. So put that in your back pocket and bring it out again soon. Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Catherine. What other creative ways did you find to raise money in your congregations or time and talent? What did you do? Alma, you've come off mute.
Um, this is more of a question about your own experience. In our stewardship committee meeting the other day, we we were wondering about the wording of thank you notes. We had intended to send thank yous more or less by email, but our priest in charge said, hey, if you spend $500 in postage one time, that will raise more than $500 because of the good feeling that people actually notice that they're noticed with their particular pledge. So she had drawn up drafts of thank you notes that would be, for instance, thank you for increasing your pledge. Thank you for turning in a pledge. Even thank you for your pledge that's less than last year. I mean, there are some, I forget how it was worded in particular, but what do you think about such very specific, individualized notes that tell people that they have been noticed with giving their pledge, but they've also been noticed if they can't pledge as much this year as last year?
Okay, that's an interesting question, and I appreciate that. Um, I don't, every
If you're
congregation,
saying something right now, I can't hear it. Sometimes it cuts out.
oh, I could hear you. I hope I can be heard. I'm not on mute. Um, anyway, so every congregation has slightly different values and principles on confidential information and what they share and what they don't share. Some congregations are really strict about who knows what about what people give, and some congregations are more open. So knowing what your culture is really important in that to begin with. So if it's not your culture, that people might know what other people give, or at least in a range, and suddenly they're hearing, thank you for making a gift that was smaller than last year, or however better way you have phrased that, that might be off-putting. That might be surprising to them. How close are they paying attention? Um, Also, but it depends on your community. In general, I would say when you're writing a personal thank you note, the treasurer has the one with the money information in it, and everyone else sends out the letter that just says thanks. And thanks for participating. Thanks for submitting a pledge form. Thanks for your giving. Thanks for volunteering. Thank you for your reading, your ushing, your bread baking, your singing, all those things that people do. Those are great things to thank for. But I would stay away from noticing in a personal handwritten thank you note who's increasing and decreasing, and just stick with the thanks. Now, if you're in one of those communities where people know what each other gives and it's small, and there are some communities like that where it's very transparent, go for it. And if it won't bother people, then do it. What you don't want is for people to feel like I'm being monitored. And so just be careful about that. In general, I love thanking people. And as a fundraiser, I default to thank you, to more people knowing what's out there and being transparent. But that's not always the case in our churches.
Yeah, thank you.
But good
Mhm.
problem to have. Ram, welcome.
Hi, Davey. I just have a quick question, and maybe the whole group can um, chime in. So we're having a discussion about stewardship and about next year, and what do we call? The question is, what do we call the pledge card? I've heard we've used pledge card, we've used commitment card, we've used annual gift of support, we've used I think we at one time we had a thing called a promise plan. And part of and what's underneath that question is what how the different generations feel about the language and the wording. I've got somebody who's in his 40s, and he says, the term pledge to him, is really too much, that there's like an expectation kind of thing that and that doesn't feel right. And then of course we've got older folks who are like, pledge card is a pledge card. And then, so what advice do you have? What are some ways that we can talk about a pledge card that might work? What do we call it so that'll work across the generational gaps?
Wow, thanks, Ram. That's a great question. Just to be transparent, Ram is on the board of directors and may or may not know that at our board retreat later this month, this is exactly the question we're going to be talking about. So, wonderful thing to talk about. But I agree. The the word pledge it has weight on it. And while many people are used to it, especially some of our older generations that have been doing this forever, some of our younger generations look at that word, and I I default to a story or a moment I had with a donor many years ago, and I asked her why she didn't pledge, and she said she was young, she is young, and she said, I have student loans, I have a car note, I don't want another debt contract, and I don't want that to be to my church. So she didn't want a pledge form. She said, I will give a gift, but I will not pledge. And great, you want to make a gift? That's good. So, what do we call it so that everybody feels comfortable with it? There isn't one magic solution, but veering away from pledge card and moving into promise or giving estimate or you know just gift. um these are all words that people can then say it's a one time, I choose to do it this way. They can fill in the meaning for them. I will, you'll hear me say this, and any of you who have been with me for a while will hear me say that the Episcopal Church needs to figure out this language as a whole. Um, Pledge, the whole notion of being able to predict next year's income is a place of privilege that not everybody can stand in. And so I think we need to think about how we run campaigns in our congregations and how we make generosity possible at meeting our members where they are, not expecting them to be where we are. The patron model of running a church is colonial. We are post-colonial, I hope. And so let's remember to look at different cultures and contexts. And again, this goes back to Amit's question about what do you share, your congregation has a culture. If you have a lot of people who don't like a particular term, don't use it. Don't, and I say that flippantly, but I don't. But like pay attention. And if you're getting pushback, um, the people who want to call it a pledge can call it a pledge. Everyone else can call it what they call it, and the result is the same. So I haven't given a definitive answer for you there, but to pay attention and try to neutralize the language. Estimate, giving, gift, promise. These are all ways to communicate it. It sounds like you've tried many of them out and are still playing with it. The thing to notice is if you get a real change, and particularly a downward change, because people didn't like language or didn't understand what it meant. So whenever you're making a change, in anything in church, moving furniture or changing words, you have to let people know why you're doing it. And so, if you're going to call it something different this year, even if you're on a path of changing it for a few years to get the right thing, let people know so that they're not like, "Whoa, you're changing words," because we feel that way in church.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ram. Good question.
I was just gonna share maybe what we again, it's what we do, not the end all be all, but any, take what serves you and leave the rest. We call them pledge cards, but we have every campaign three tenets of pledging. A pledge is a promise. All pledges are good pledges, and you're not alone in your pledge. So if there's any point where you feel stressed about your pledge or unsure, never do it alone. And so, always talk to me or someone else you feel comfortable with. That's always a language that we use in every campaign, regardless of what exactly the theme is of that year. And so we are very much like, we call it a pledge card, but we're very much like pledges are promises. And then in the pledge card, we use my promise for insert this year. So we kind of not, we're using different language, but we sort of call it a pledge card, but we're introducing different, language for it. And then throughout the year, we do roughly quarterly updates on our pledges received to date. And for that, we call it filling our heart. And so we have a visual that's a heart, and as the year goes on, the heart becomes red, like a percentage wise of how much it's been filled. And so those are also nice ways to remind our congregation about, where we're at throughout the year since they're not seeing the budget every month like vestry is, but in a way that feels maybe less stressful and a little bit more joyful. But those are the things that we kind of describe pledge as a promise. That's our big one. That's our first one. But I can also write it in the chat. And I saw
Yeah, yeah.
Margaret's note.
Please do. I love those
Okay.
three tenets.
Yeah.
You have some really good practices in your congregation, Catherine. So thank you for that, for thinking about your stewardship in that way. Really, really good stuff. I love that.
Oh, thank you.
You're just on the right track. The other thing I like to remind people in a pledge campaign is that before you pick up a pen, you should pick up a prayer and really pray about this. What is God calling me to do with this gift to my church? Have that conversation around your dinner table or with your kids or whatever. Like, what do we want to do this year? What does church mean to us? Uh, we give to the church and the zoo and whatever else we give to, where do how much do you want to do with all of those things and put it in context? Giving shouldn't be an isolated or quiet thing. It should be a conversation with God, but also with the other people in your household if you share a household with other people. So really, really beautiful. A pledge is a promise. I love it. Thank you. Good practices. Edward, come on off mute.
Good. So you saw me.
I did.
I can never find the hand. My name is Edward. I'm from St. Beats Episcopal Church, like Almuth. And my question to you, by the way, I want to add that I've been enjoying this tremendously. I wish I I would have listened to all your advice before we started our campaign.
It's always
But
next year.
yes, but the part that I always struggle with are the phone calls.
Hmm.
Many times, I've been in committees and they ask me to make a phone call, and of course, you get different responses. Some people are really pleased that you give them a call, and other people you can tell that they feel somehow surprised, perturbed a little bit, maybe that the phone call is a little bit invasive in some way. So I picked that up. I picked that up, and it makes me feel very uncomfortable, and I feel that it interferes with my ability to be effective in what I want to say, because I'm more concerned about their feelings than anything else. So I'm wondering, what do you think about phone calls? How are they necessary? Should we do them? Um, I don't know. Just a general question about phone calls.
Thanks, Edward, and thanks for being vulnerable and talking about, what it brings up for you.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Um, so when it comes to phone calls, I think they are useful, especially if they are built into the process, right? If the only time you get a phone call is when you haven't turned in a pledge form, then it starts to feel like, why? Why are they reaching out to me? I know I haven't done it yet. I'm about to get a phone call. A few years ago, I was in a congregation and they made a joke about that. They were like, if you don't fill in your pledge form, you're going to get a call from Bill. And I was like, oh, poor Bill. Like, what is he terrible to talk to? Like, what's the deal? So like when we put that as a part of, you only get the phone call if you haven't turned it in, then it's a chore, right? So if phone calling is part of the charism of your stewardship campaign, divide up the phone calls and develop a script together. This isn't something that you have to do on your own, but your committee should say, I'm Edward, you know me, I sing in the choir with you. I don't know if you do that, Edward, but whatever. And no, I don't sing in the choir. But I've known you for this, and I'm talking to you about your commitment in time, talent, and treasure for the coming year. Uh, there are lots of ways, we have this campaign going on. There are pledge cards or promise cards, or there's an ability to make a gift. What questions do you have about the church? Or what would you like me to know about what you're doing? And it can be about anything, not just about your gift or your giving, right? You're having a conversation. I'm talking about this. I'm here calling because you're on my list. But, this is our time. I love you. I worship with you. We're in community. How can we have that conversation and develop a script so that it's not I'm following up or I'm only calling you because I want money from you. They get enough of those calls. We get enough of those calls as it is. So that's really good. I want to touch on the other thing that you said. I can tell you're an intuitive and compassionate person, and you're picking up what people give you, and that's honorable. That's who we are. Fundraising, uh, we have a job to do as the stewardship committee. And it is to help people make their best gift, to give them the right information, to give them the opportunity. And as much as you can separate yourself from their feelings and focus on the job. Now, I'm not saying be ruthless, right? But you have a job to do too. You're calling them because you care about this and you've been designated to work on this. And so you have I see it as sort of no shame, right? I'm doing this because the church has asked me to do it. And I might have a conversation with you that I wouldn't normally have because I'm doing this for the church. I'm not just doing it as me, I'm a part of the committee. And so you kind of bring that with you. If that's, I made an armor position, but maybe it's not armor, maybe it's openness. Whatever it is, you bring that with you. And you don't have to take on obviously you don't want to hurt their feelings, but you don't have to take on their energy either, because here's the other truth. Everybody has energy about their money. And so you're always hearing something in subtext, in tone. People are a little weird about what they share. I mean, even people who know each other, right? You don't always talk about money with your best friends or your cousin, right? So you might be aware that when you're talking about money, you're going to hear other things in people's voices or in the way they interact because we all have stuff. Oh, I'm really worried about my bills. Oh, I'm not sure I'm going to have a job next year. This person's asking me for money. And those are conversations that you're not hearing. You're only hearing what comes out of their head or their mouth. So don't take that on, but love them and give them an opportunity. Those are a couple of ideas. But if the phone calls aren't working, and especially if they're only about follow-up, ditch them and come up with a new plan. Because it sounds like it might feel icky. Thanks, Edward. That's great.
Thank you
I
so much.
was gonna recommend, um, based on the presentation and doing like a July sermon on generosity, if you could do a phone call that's more focused on maybe time and talent, less about treasure, and then that way it's not necessarily tied to the campaign, but then when you call maybe again with the campaign, it's almost like a follow-up and then you're bringing in treasure, so that it doesn't feel like we are just asking about treasure. But that might be a because I could imagine, oh, our priest gave a beautiful sermon on Sunday about generosity, wanted to, touch, just reach out to you and see, where you feel like your time and talent, is it being utilized the best way we can? Do you want to do more? Do you want to do less? And then that informs like a follow-up call in the fall. So you're not necessarily just following up around treasure. But that's just another thought.
Y'all got some real good practices in your congregation, Catherine, and that's a beautiful idea. Thank you for sharing it. I love the call for no reason. I'm just checking in on you. Or, it's the middle of the summer and it's the same for people who are reading every Sunday. We need some more readers. Are you interested in that? Or there's a particular volunteer job that we're looking at? Start to like have those kinds of conversations with people so that they understand it's not just about. And you can also always check in. How are things going for you? How's church for you? What's happening? And we are in community together. And so those kinds of conversations are really good to have. Yeah, Margaret.
Hi. First, I just want to thank you for all of this great content and conversation. It's been very valuable and inspiring for me. Um, I was I'm new to the stewardship chair position this year. In fact, I'm kind of picking up after a very some year over year campaigns that have been kind of getting smaller and less focused, and so I'm trying to rejuvenate it. I also don't have a strong network in the church. I sing in the choir, so I'm in the back in the choir stalls, kind of doing my thing, and not a lot of people see my face really because I'm looking at singing at the back of their heads. So one of my challenges to Edward's point is that I don't have a strong when I pick up the phone, people don't know who I am. So one of the things that I thought might be a good idea for me is to lead the conversation and talk about why I chose what I felt called to do, why I felt called to chair the stewardship committee this year. Um, and um, and just and not as a not to talk about myself, but to help people to get to know me and so people can get to know me and understand why I chose this position and what I'm trying to do. Um, and hoping that is an invitation for people to then reciprocate with, why they are there, or why they're coming to our church. What are they getting out of? I don't want to say getting out of it, but what's their, what might they be motivated to do, to give? So maybe that's a way that you can open that conversation is, talking about why you feel compelled to even serve on this committee. What is it that what is it that's meaningful to you? And then maybe they might reciprocate.
Margaret, thank you for that. And it's beautiful. I think when we talk about storytelling,
Hmm.
either in the campaign or follow up or throughout the year, right? Those stories are your story, your authentic story, sharing why you are called, are giving, why you care about the church, whatever it is that you want your entry point in that story to be. It's the perfect intuition into having that conversation. And as you pointed out in your last point, it's the model then that you teach others. So I'm sharing my story about why I'm connected to this place and why this matters to me. And you've given them the script, the groundwork to be able to form their own story so that they can tell others, articulate their own reasons of faith for why they contribute to the church or why it matters or what they're called to do. And they might not understand that that's the invitation they've been given when they hear your story, but they'll be reminded of it when it comes time to share their story. That's why I think stewardship should have storytelling throughout it, throughout the year, certainly within the campaign, after the campaign, that kind of authentic peer-to-peer moment of connection is unbeatable in terms of authenticity, in terms of connection point, in terms of just that intuitive, collaborative community love that we want to share with each other. I think you're right on instinct with that. Congratulations on stepping into the chair. However, TENS can help you this year, uh, you have access. And email me, call me. We're here to walk with you.
Thanks.
Good work.
One other thing, I know I'm talking like way too much.
Not at all.
But you might consider doing like a congregational letter before your phone calls and possibly like sharing a little bit of your story, but maybe not the whole, but like give people a note that you're going to be calling them and putting maybe your picture and a note that, you may not see me every Sunday because I'm in the choir, loft or where I see you, but you might not see me. So I'm, introducing myself and that might also be nice. We do that in our stewardship inserts. We put a little picture of the person who contributed to the insert and a little note about them, which service they attend. We have a couple services, so which service they attend, of their favorite hobby or activity that they like to do, just to give people a little bit of, this is, oh, that's that person that I sometimes see or I don't see because they go to a different service. But that might be nice because then people will know that you're gonna call them as opposed to having to like fully cold call, which can be tough.
Yeah. I thank you for that, Catherine. I would also encourage your church leaders, your vestry or your rector or whatever to say, hey, meet Margaret and put you in the newsletter. Margaret's chairing the stewardship committee this year. And it's just so everybody knows. But not to avoid you at coffee hour, but to know who you are and what you're doing and why they might be hearing from you if they've never met you before. And just, it's a little introduction. We should really actually be doing that with all of our ministries, hey, here's in charge who's in charge of hospitality. Here's who's in charge of being an usher. Here's who's in charge of our youth program, so that people know who's doing what. But it's a good way to introduce you into this work. You're going to have a great year. Wow. Well, friends, thank you. We've gone a little overtime, and I don't mind that at all because your questions and your contributions to this morning have been beautiful. But we do need to wrap it up. I have things to do this Saturday, and I bet you do as well. I've put my email in the chat, davy@tens.org. Please, when I say follow up and ask questions, I really mean that anytime. I am here. I love to talk about stewardship, and I am blessed to be able to work for an organization that gives me the ability to talk about stewardship 24/7, 365. and it is great and joyous work. So let me help you in the ways that I can. TENS has lots for you, and we can always be more. So thank you. Thank you. What a wonderful morning. Look for an email and a video and some links from me later. And we're gathering on February 21st virtually to talk about legacy societies and planned giving. If that's work that you're thinking of doing in your church, wondering how to get back into it, sign up for that webinar and we'll see you in February. All right, friends, have a good day.